Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Hare Krishna dear devotees. Hare Krishna dear devotees. Hare Krishna Shashi Mataji, Jai Jagannath, Jai Baladev, wonderful username, and Shikha Mataji, and anyone else who's on. So, today we are going to be doing the chapter summary for the chapters 7 to 12, the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which we have covered recently. And we are also going to we're going to go in a little bit of an overview sort of means rather than actually focusing on each and every verse, because the nature of the Bhagavad Gita is so much that we aren't able to necessarily focus on every single verse and the meaning of every verse in depth. And not only that, every single verse you can talk and take multiple points from every verse. I know that Hare Krishna Kailash Prabhu, I know that one verse is described that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he explained the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam for 31 days, and every single day it was a different meaning. So in that manner, we're only taking a little overview, some of the bullet points of the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which deals with the devotional service. The first 6 chapters often deal with Hare Krishna Radha Mataji. First 6 chapters often deal with the ideas of karma, activity, and inaction, action, all of those, action, inaction, and all those very topics to do with about reaction and action, activity. And the middle 6 chapters, which are hidden between the first and the last 6, the sandwich in between, the filling, the true taste of the Bhagavad Gita is provided here in the middle 6 chapters. And so in these middle 6 chapters, we talk about devotional service, and it starts off very nicely. As we know, Gita started off with Arjuna's problem. So the first 6 chapters have taken us to that level of consciousness, that level of understanding. The consciousness is very important. That it's not the activity, but rather the mindset with which it's done. And now, moving on from that, we've now been left in the 6th chapter. The ending of the 6th chapter is what starts off the idea of devotional service. Krishna says in the ending of the 6th chapter that tapasvibhyodiko yogi jnanidyopi madodikaha karmibhyoschaapiko yogi tasmat yogi bhavajana. That there is a yogi who is greater. Yoga means connection. There is a yogi who is greater, that of a karma yogi, that of a jnana yogi, karma yogi who's doing work, jnana yogi who's renouncing and focusing on the esoteric topics, trying to understand through knowledge. And also just the yogi that does austerity as well. So better than these, there is another one. And you should become that type of yogi. And what yogi is that? And this is what it starts off. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam sameyukta tamonmataha. Yoga means connection. So Lord Krishna says, of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So the one who is most intimately united with Lord in yoga, that connection, is the yogi who's always thinking of the Lord, who's always engaging in the transcendental loving service. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. Shraddhavan means in full faith, and bhajate means the rendering the transcendental loving service unto the Lord. And so now that has been mentioned, now we're going to go on past the simple understanding of action and inaction, which is very practical, but we go on to a level above that. And this is where the chapter 7 starts. And so to understand that, who is this bhakti yogi? Why is the bhakti yogi the culmination of all these other patterns? Why is it so important? Lord, now Arjuna does not speak. Lord Krishna is speaking. He himself changes the topic because that's how important it is. Sometimes it's that Arjuna has to ask, and then Lord mentions because that's what Arjuna wants to know. But this topic is so important that Krishna goes himself. And he mentions, and this is one of the most important verses in the 7th chapter, because it says a lot about the 7th chapter, even at the start. This is really the concept of what we're dealing with. He says that by practicing the yoga in full consciousness and with your mind attached, then you can know me in full, and you can be free from doubt. And so the word he ends with tachshanu. So, oh, hear this. Try to hear this matter which I'm about to tell you. And why is the hearing so important? A lot of times in life, we love to talk, we love to do the speaking ourselves. But it's very important sometimes that we sit back and we hear, because not only very materially is that important that we listen, but also spiritually, that same principle applies. That principle of hearing, because it's through hearing that we can gain this knowledge. We think we know everything, but it's actually very good. It's therefore tachshunu, the importance of the hearing. And when especially in this process which Lord is describing, the hearing is what leads to that desire. That when you hear about, let's say, I hear about a famous footballer. Someone comes to me and he says, wow, did you see this? He did X, Y, Z on the weekend. He scored this penalty. He did this or whatnot. Then I will develop an interest. And so when we hear about the activities of the Lord, naturally we already have the interest within our heart. So it's not difficult to reawaken that dormant interest. But simply all we have to do is hear, and that hearing is what starts off the process, really, when we just sit down and we hear. And so he explains that I'm now going to tell you this knowledge. Sometimes we think in a slightly more ritualistic manner. My parents did this, their parents did that, and so I will just do that. I won't really listen to anything. It's not what my area of interest is in. But actually, it's described that what's the use? I think it's very nicely worded. What's the use of doing this? Let's say for seeing the deities, for example, we can see the deities all we like. The deities, they are beautiful. Yeah, they are very beautiful. Of course they are. The Lord is so beautiful. His form is so beautiful. But if we are just seeing the deities and we're not hearing and then applying in our own life, then we are just getting a nice eye massage. That's what we're doing. Instead, we need to try and hear. So we need to try and actually hear about the Lord and then apply if we want to see the change in the heart. So the change in the heart comes from hearing. That's really where it all starts from. So that's a very important point that the 7th chapter tells us immediately. So because we want to see that change in the heart, then we need to apply, and that application then is done by that devotee. So the devotee understands and then applies. What does he understand first? The Lord explains his opulences, his various qualities and various characteristics and various energies. So he describes first in the 4th and 5th verses the elements that are all coming from him. The 4th verse describes the gross elements, and the 5th verse describes the subtle elements. The 4th verse describes the gross and subtle elements, the material elements, and the 5th verse describes the humans, who are also part of the Lord's energy. Yeah, the spiritual. So the soul, in other words, the jiva, the atma. And so in verse 4, the Lord describes that the earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are the material energy. And then on top of that, there's also spiritual energy as well. That is the soul. And so we understand that these are the energies of the Lord. Then not only that, the Lord also shows in 13th verse as well that he's also above the modes of material nature. So we understand now, when we're hearing, we're developing this knowledge, we hear that all these energies are there, and the Lord is the controller, and he's beyond these energies, because he's the energetic from which these energies are coming from. And so when we understand the energies, it's not that now we become fearful, it's not that now we become worried, or it's not that Lord Krishna is showing off. He's only telling this to his dear friend because Arjuna wants to know. So that's why he's telling. And so when we know the subtle, gross, the material and spiritual energies, the modes of nature, that they're all coming from the Lord, then what does the devotee do? This is a really important point, which is made in the 14th verse of this chapter. So in verse 14, Lord Krishna very nicely says, Daivihesha gunamayi mama maya dhuratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. That this divine energy of mine, constituting of the 3 modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. And so the Lord is saying, Mameva. When he says Mameva, me alone. Ishvaraha Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. The Lord Krishna. That Lord Krishna, he who is the source of the material nature, when we take shelter of him, he will naturally take us. He will very quickly take us. And so when we are struggling in the ocean of material existence, and it's very easy if the Lord says, okay, those who surrender unto me, I will take care of them, and they can easily cross beyond it. That's very important, because we are struggling. Now, everyone in their life experience struggles, whether it be me, whether it be you, whether it be my parents, whether it be my siblings, everyone will experience. And we all know that this world is full of struggles. And so now the devotees, they have realized these struggles, but they've also noticed the other thing, that the energies are coming from the Lord. And so they're going to take the shelter of the Lord. And so that taking shelter is so important. And this is also one of the things that very, very nicely describes about the Bhakti Yogi, the one who takes in devotional service. Then the 7th chapter also talks about those who surrender and don't surrender unto the Lord, and the various means of surrender that they try. So there are those who don't surrender, who are impious, and they don't surrender because they are atheistic, or they're the lowest among mankind, etc., etc. And those who are pious, they do surrender. Those who are carrying out, this, what's the word for it? Inquisitive. Those who are inquisitive, those who want the wealth, or those who are distressed, then they turn to the Lord. But the pious, they will naturally turn towards the Lord, and they will surrender. And there are various different types of surrender, but the Lord establishes that actually the surrender unto me alone is what frees us. Because everyone in the universe, everyone with any degree of power, they will always try and help us to understand that goal. And it's not that. Another important point that's very much clearly made is that it's not that by worshipping someone that I am now detestful of someone else. It's not by subscribing to one path that I hate all other paths. I don't agree with them. I disagree with them. Mine is better. Theirs is what? No, that's not the case. Yata taror mula nishechanena triptyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. So when we water the root of the tree, the mula, the roots, then the trees, the branches and the twigs, triptyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. The trunk, the trees, branches, and the twigs, they all become happy. So thereby, if we engage our energy or our whatever facilities we have, we employ them in the service of the Lord, then everyone becomes happy. And so there is no notion, very important point, there is no notion of disrespect in devotional service. Disrespect does not exist in devotional service. There is only loving devotional service to the Lord. When one engages in devotional service, they want to do it because they want to serve the Lord. That's why there is no disrespect. There is respect for everyone, and the devotee carries out their devotional service. That's a very, very important point. Sometimes people think that now by taking to one path, I'm now dividing. I'm using this method of it's a division between people. Rather, it's actually a unification. That's a very important idea. And so, like that, Lord, those are the very important points in the 7th chapter. And then just before he ends this chapter, Lord Krishna uses some very technical terms. Sadi Buddha Devamam, Sadi Yajnam Chayevadu. He talks very technically. And so the 8th chapter, it begins with a question from Arjuna. So in the 7th chapter, very important that we realize the hearing and applying to see the change, and understanding the Lord's energies and taking shelter of him. And those who apply surrender, those who are impious don't. So it's very important to surrender unto the Lord. In the 8th chapter, now Arjuna, he's heard a lot of technical terms, and this is the quality of a good student. Please take note that, again, you may not be students. I am a student right now. But one of the things a student should do is whenever there is a problem, whenever there is a doubt, one should ask a question. And Arjuna, Krishna always encourages questions. He never reprimands questions. He never says, why are you interrupting me? No. He encourages that. Because doubting is a function of intelligence. And so the doubt means that the intelligence is working. So whenever there is a doubt, that should be asked. And then the Lord will provide the answer, of course. And so, yes, so many questions. And Krishna answers 7 of these questions immediately. Quickly. Oh, this is that. And the final question is the one that the Lord explains then throughout the rest of this chapter. In the Western world, and also in the Eastern world at the present moment as well, the discussion of death is seen as a very taboo topic, a very not inspirational, demotivating, depressing topic. But actually, Lord Krishna embraces this talk immediately because the devotee recognizes that death is certain. Death is a part of the being embodied in this material body. We will naturally have to experience the death of this body. The soul never dies, but the body does. And so when we see that death is there, then, well, if you want to engage in seemingly temporary forms of happiness and distress, it seems like a waste. Because what's the point? And that's why very nicely it's described that if I'm going, let's say, I'm reading a book or I'm watching a film, famous film has come out, I want to watch a film, and so someone says to me, oh, you seen the film, and blah blah, and then they just immediately they tell what's in the film, then you might not be so encouraged to see what's in the film because you know that's how it's going to end. Similarly, if we notice that that at the end of this body we will die is the truth, there is no need to shy away from it, then actually we become more peaceful. Because then we know what we need to do. If I'm engaging in some sort of temporary, unsustainable activity, then we know, well, that's not really the case. That's not really the best thing that I'm doing. I'm not using my time wisely. We know we have a finite amount of time, but yet we think we have an infinite amount of time. And so it's the question that Arjuna asks, how can we attain the supreme? That is the question which is answered in this chapter. And so Yudhishthira Maharaj has very nicely said in the Mahabharata, Ahanyahani bhutani gachanti hayamalayam sheshastavaram ichanti kimascharyamatapparam. A person is seeing many people dying around him or her every single day. They see so many people die, but yet he thinks, I'm immortal. I won't die. What is more wonderful than this? So it's important that we recognize that, yes, this material body is temporary. And so we need to understand what's beyond this body, what happens for those who leave the body, and how should we leave the body properly. It's a very, very practical chapter. And so immediately, of course, after answering these questions, the Lord now focuses on what's beyond this body. And he describes very nicely that whatever we think of at the end of our life, antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevana. So one who thinks of me, Lord Krishna, at the end of his body, then he will come to the Lord. And one who thinks of whatever state we leave the body in, that is the state that we achieve. So death is like whatever we think at the time of death that is the body that we will achieve. And so there's a very nice story given of Jada Bharat, he's a king originally, Bharat Maharaj. He's a king. And he's the ruler of India. That's why India is called Bharat. And throughout his rule, the great king, wonderful. He was great at ruling the citizens. He was, managing the various authorities well. He was very good as a king. And so he felt at that time, okay, I now need to renounce and go to forest and spend the rest of my life in devotional service. So he goes to the forest. And he goes and he starts his worship. And there's this one time, this female, this doe, a pregnant doe comes. And she's running away from a tiger. And she has to try and jump over a little lake. Is it a lake? Is that the word? It's a lake. And she's trying to jump over the lake. And out of fear, she actually has a miscarriage. And then she dies. And so this baby deer that has now been born. Now the devotee is naturally compassionate. So Bharat Maharaj is very compassionate. And so he immediately starts taking care of this baby deer and making sure it's keeping well, feeding it well, holding it nicely, making sure that all its needs are fulfilled. And so he starts focusing on all these deer's needs to the extent that he then stops focusing on the Lord. Every time he's now chanting his Gayatri Mantra, he's having a little look. Where's the deer? Oh, the deer's okay, it's fine, yeah. And every time he's offering Aarti, he's then having a quick look. Where's the deer? Oh, deer's that. Okay, good. Making sure that the deer is being taken care of. And so he's thinking about the deer so much, but one day the baby deer leaves him. And he becomes almost what's described as maddened. He starts saying, "Oh, Earth, oh, wonderful Mother Earth, how lucky you are that you are able to have the footprints of this deer." Because that he's become so attached to this deer. And so we will see when we become attached to things like that in their life and they leave, then we will also have that type of reaction. But Krishna, when we become attached, he will never leave us. Anyway, Bharat Maharaj is saying, oh dear, where are you? And slowly, in the due course of time, of course, he passes away, thinking about this deer. And what happens to the next body? He gets the body of a deer. And so it is similarly, whatever states we are thinking of in that body, whatever we think of at the time of the death, then that's the state we will achieve in the next body. So if we think of the Lord, we will achieve the plans of the Lord. And that's a very simple point which is made there. And so then the Lord explains the difference between the material and spiritual nature. Material nature is such, and this is one of like the poster boy equations of the Bhagavad Gita. It can be described. Lord Krishna says very clearly in verse 15, Mamupetya punarjanma dukkha layama shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gata. After attaining me, great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Mam upetya punarjanma dukkha layama shashvatam. So the creator of all, the source of all creation is Lord Hari, Lord Krishna. And he is saying himself, he's giving not only has he made the product, but he's also giving a little warning sign, a little note of how to use. Dukkha alayam ashashvatam. Dukkha alayam. Alayam means like a place or a room. So in this case, it's like a place. And dukkha means misery, sorrow. So dukkha alayam, he's giving the rubber stamp. This place is a place of misery. And then ashashvatam, impermanent. In other words, temporary. So everything here is temporary, and it's also a place full of miseries. If one is looking for gold in a coal mine, will they find gold? It'll be very difficult. And even if they find gold, it'll be minute in quantity. But that the thing is mentioned, if you go to a coal mine, you may find gold, But in the material world, you will never find happiness. There will no happiness. Everything is misery. There is no happiness and distress. The happiness and distress is only distress, actually, because the happiness only leads to distress. In the material world, we say there's happiness and distress, but that's also another form of distress, because the happiness is non-permanent. Can you call flickering happiness happiness if it only leads to misery in the long term? No, not really. So that's why it's described dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So those who know that this material world is a place full of miseries, will they really want to dedicate their life to only achieving something material, something which is impermanent, something which is not everlasting? No. And so that's why those who have this knowledge and recognize, okay, this material world is a place full of miseries, it's impermanent, so therefore I'm going to go something beyond that, something spiritual. And that's why that comes into understanding. And not just, we may think us on the earthly planets. The description of the material world is very elaboratorily given in the various planetary systems. We're in Jambudvipa, there's many others on the same level as us, there's many other planetary systems above and below us. Even the Lord Brahma, it's described in verse number 17. Even he, who is the topmost in this material creation, has to be born and has to die. Even Brahma is not exempt. So even when Lord Brahma is not exempt, this material world which is given, then what is beyond this? What is the spiritual world like? And the spiritual world is described as everlasting. Tad dhamma paramam mama. What's the yam prapya nanivartante tad dhamma paramam mama. That once you're having attained, one never returns. That is the supreme abode of Lord Krishna. So, when we know very clearly, material world, place full of miseries, impermanent, temporary. Spiritual world, place full of happiness, and is permanent. It's a very logical decision between the two. And so then the Lord may say, okay, so now you got the understanding between the difference in both. Vaikuntha, what does Vaikuntha mean? Vaikuntha means Vaikuntha, a place where there is no misery. No anxiety, exactly. Yeah, no anxiety. So in Vaikuntha, there is no anxiety. This is the meaning of Vaikuntha. And so now one understands, okay, it's very clear the difference between the two. Now, how do I achieve this spiritual world? And so that process is given as devotional service, as expected. Purushasapara partha bhaktya labhyastvananya yasyantastani bhutani yena sarvamidam tadam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Bhaktya labhyastvananya. By unalloyed, ananya. Ananya means unalloyed. By unalloyed devotional service, one can attain it. And then at the end of the 8th chapter, so at the beginning, there's the questions by Arjuna. Then there's the talk of this death and life. And then we've just talked about the material versus spiritual worlds. Now, with the process to get spiritual is devotional service. And there are various paths given. One who passes away during the path of darkness he goes to the planets of, what's the exact word for it? He goes to the planets. So the one who passes away in the path of light, he goes to he attains the impersonal state, and he attains that state happily forever. And there's a person who goes in the path of darkness, he attains the heavenly planets and he has to come back. So there's these two paths. There's one a supreme path and there's another path which is given. But then there's like it depends on the time. When are you leaving? How are you acting? There's so many dependencies there. But simply given in the 24th, 25th verse, these various paths are given, the path of light and the path of darkness. And the path of light one can leave, and the path of darkness one cannot. But there is an anytime path as well, which is given for the devotees. And it's mentioned very nicely in the 27th verse. Naite shriti partha janan yogi muhyati kashana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhavarjuna. Although the devotees, they know both paths, they are not bewildered. Therefore, always be fixed in devotion. And then he explains very nicely, finally, Vedeshu yagneshu chapassu cheva dhaneshu yat punya phalam pratishtam atyeti tat sarvamidam viditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadhyam. So not only the devotee can leave any time and get the spiritual destination, but one who takes to the devotional service, Vedeshu, all the study of the Vedas, whatever you can get from that. Yajneshu, all the performances of yajnas and sacrifices. Tapassu, tapa means austerity, all the austerities you can go to. Dhaneshu, all the charity that you can give out. And all these activities which you can do. Now the devotee, does he lose or gain any of this now because he's just leaving at any time? He's only doing devotional service. The devotee gets everything else and more. There is no loss in the path of devotional service. Very, very important point. There is no loss. Whatever result you get by doing any individual activity, you get all of that plus more through devotional service. And so the devotional service is that which is above these, all these paths are given, but the devotional service is above, it transcends all these paths. And therefore, that's one of the key qualities of devotional service, that there's no loss in it. There's only to gain.
In other thoughts, they mentioned only the fruit by that path.
Yes. So that's very important. Yeah. If I read the Vedas, let's say I only get the fruit of reading Vedas, let's say, for example. Or if I do this, then I only get the result of charity. Only the result of charity, but nothing else. By doing devotional service, I get the results of all of these, and also I get the loving devotion unto the Lord. So that it's like everything is summarized, and I get to go back. So there is nothing but gain. It's like the Lord is giving very nice example now. Material world, spiritual world, and this process is to get to spiritual world. Very nice process, and it gives you everything. Who wouldn't want to take that process after such a journey? So it's the it's the real jackpot. It's the real jackpot we're winning. So the devotee, he leaves at any time. It's okay. So therefore, he has nothing to worry. Sometimes it's said that you need to leave in a holy place. But what does the Lord say to that? Actually, Yudhishthira Maharaj says that, he says to Vidura when he's talking, that devotees like you are verily holy place personified, because you're worshipping the Lord within your heart. So that the devotee, wherever the devotee is, that place is Vaikunta in the end of the day. And it's not that Manchester is now unholy, and then if I go to Vrindavan only, I will be able to go, or if I go to India. No, not like that. It's wherever the devotees are, and the devotee always makes the mood of devotion, the atmosphere of devotion. So that place itself is verily a holy place in itself. And so because they're always remembering the Lord and never forgetting the Lord, that's really the gist of it. Always remember the Lord, never forget the Lord. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And so that really is the summary of chapter 8. There's no loss, only gain, only happiness. Death is death is not a bad thing. Death is a good thing, because by the death of this body, one can attain the Supreme Lord through devotional service. And so the devotees, they don't shy away of thinking of death as a taboo topic. They're very happy, because that's the means of going to the Lord in the end of the day. And so then from chapter 8 to chapter 9, we see that the Lord has described the devotional service, and now he will go in further depth about this devotee is transcending these paths. So what really is the devotional service? It's called the most confidential knowledge. We had transcendental knowledge in chapter 4, absolute knowledge of absolute in chapter 7, but the most confidential knowledge will be given here. It's sometimes described as like the king may travel with an entourage around him, or sometimes there is a gold which is hidden throughout all. It's a variety of things are around it, but the gold is hidden in the middle because you want to hide it from everyone else. You put all the fillers around it. And so that central part of the Bhagavad Gita is this 9th chapter. And the 9th chapter is really the summary. 9th and 10th chapter, they are like the gist, they're the crème de la crème. Already middle 6 chapters are beautiful, but the crème de la crème, the crux and the gist and the essence is all in these 2 chapters here. And so the most confidential knowledge, now Lord Krishna will tell it. Again, he speaks on the importance of hearing, but not only about the hearing, but he explains something else about devotion, which is very nice. And he explains in the 2nd verse, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idamitam Uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. It's the king of education. It's the king of all secrets. It's so pure. It gives the direct perception of the self, and it's everlasting, and it's joyfully performed. Susukam Kartum Avyayam. This is the process of devotion. So it's very joyfully performed always. And also, something else about this hearing, this knowledge which is about to be given, is a little bit different to the other ones. Ashraddha dana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. So not only is this hearing very important, but it's also the faith. This knowledge is rather not against faith, but faith specific. So it's to the degree we try and understand and we are more like surrendered unto the Lord, it's that degree that he responds back. It's that degree of reciprocation which is given. And so in the 9th chapter, he talks first about the importance of that hearing, which is state specific. And then we also talk about his achintya shakti. Achintya means inconceivable. Now this is a very tricky part, very, very philosophical part. But simply put, the Lord is unknowable, especially to anyone. The only person that knows the Lord in full is the Lord. And so Lord Brahma says, forget us, Lord Brahma says that, people think they know you, but I can say myself, I do not know you in full. We can only know to the extent of our knowledge, and so that's what we try to understand. But we can never know the Supreme Lord in full. If the Supreme Lord was all-knowable, then he would not be supreme, because he's conceivable. So therefore, the inconceivable nature of the Lord is mentioned. He says, Matstani sarva bhutani, nacha matstani bhutani. He says all these quite seemingly contradictory statements, because that contradiction is all reconciled by the Lord. The different various levels of understanding. Simply put, although the Lord is responsible for everything, he's aloof. And he's outside of the realms of nature, which is very, very complicated to understand. But that is not something to try and confuse us. Rather, it's trying to strengthen our faith and understanding. So when we understand that there's this various nature of the Lord can do this, this, and this simultaneously without being affected, then we can then understand, okay, so someone like that, if I surrender unto them, then they will be able to take me out of here. And so when Lord Brahma says that, who are we to argue? Sometimes people may question that, what is this, what you're saying, whatever is nonsense. Look, Lord Brahma is the one who said it. Let's just go with his word. I'm definitely not as smart as Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma said that, then that means it's true. And so, inconceivable nature of the Lord is very difficult to understand, especially as Lord Krishna. How can one who is not bound by anything, not bound by karma, not bound by even the demigods, they try and understand him, the devatas, they try their hardest to understand him, that person who is the supreme personality God of all the universes, he's running away, crying after stealing butter. He's stealing butter, running and crying away from his own mum. How can that be understood? Kunti Maharani says that, Gopyada detvai kritagasi dhamatavad yate dhashashru kalilanjana sambramaksham Vatram niniya bhaya bhavanayasti dasya samam vimohayati bhirapi yadbhiveti. What is more confusing than this? That you, who are the supreme personality of Godhead, are running away crying, genuinely crying out of fear from your own mother. This is not some act that Lord Krishna is putting on. It's described that Lord Krishna, when he's crying from his mother, it's genuinely crying. So how do we understand that? This is the inconceivable nature of the Lord. And so that's one of the things that's really important to get in our understanding. And then the Lord explains very nicely that those who worship the Lord will come to the Lord. Yanti deva vrata devan pitran yanti pitravrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyaji no apima. Those who worship the demigods, they'll go to the planets of the demigods. Those who worship the ghosts and spirits, they'll go to the planets of the ghosts and spirits. But those who worship those who worship the ancestors, they will go to the planets of the ancestors. But those who worship me, they will come to me. The thing is that when we worship the demigods or anything else which is still contained in the material nature, then we are still here. We're not leaving. We're not being liberated, or we're not getting the devotional service beyond that liberation as well. And so when we serve the Lord, then he will take care of us. And not just will he take care of us, but he says, very, very importantly, that he will personally provide what we lack and carry what we have. In the 22nd verse of the 9th chapter, 22nd verse of the 9th chapter, he describes that, so he says, Vahamyaham, instead of Karomyaham. So the idea is, okay, we'll say the verse. Ananyascintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. And so he's saying very clearly, personally, Vaham aham. Aham means I. Vahami means I carry. I will carry what they lack. I will preserve what they have. The Lord says that he will do it. What is the need for us to worry? And so there's the story of Arjuna, which has been mentioned before. Arjuna thought, what does this mean? Vahamyaham, karomyaham. What is this? I'm going to cross. So he crossed out Vahamyaham and he replaced it with karomyaham. I'll get it done. I'll not personally do myself, I'll get it done with someone else. That same day, and when Arjunacharya went out, then two boys, one bluish blackish boy and one slightly more pale in complexion, they both come, very young boys, and they come with baskets of food, and they give to Arjunacharya's wife and say, Arjunacharya, he has asked us to give you these wonderful fruits. And so he said, oh wow, this is very interesting, I was not expecting this at all. And so one of the boys said, no, he actually beat me. And so the one who's darkish in complexion turns around and shows the mark on the back, which is given from the beating. And so he says, oh, why would he beat you like that? And so she becomes very confused. Those two boys leave, and she's thinking, why? This is very outside of his nature. He's very calm, compassionate, devoted. Why would he hit someone like that? And so then Arjunacharya comes back home, and he thinks, he says, no, I did not send anyone. I didn't send any of those two boys. And the bluish blackish one had a beating on the back, and he said, no, this is not true. So he's confused. He goes back to his Bhagavad Gita commentary, and the line where he scribbled out Vaham had disappeared. So he'd realized, actually, the Lord will say, I personally will carry what you lack, and I personally will preserve what you have. The Lord takes that responsibility. Lord will take that responsibility. He will take care. We don't need to worry about these things. All we need to do, ananya, having nothing else, exclusive devotional service. That's the most important point. Yeah, that's it's not delegation. You know, when sometimes as managers, then people they have various things to do in their production process or something, and they will delegate. Oh, you do this job, you do this, you take care. No, the Lord says, I will do myself. And like in the case of Gajendra, where he himself personally comes, he doesn't get anyone else. He comes himself and does it. That's very important. Then this is arguably one of the most important verses in the entirety of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's definitely the one that, if applied, makes the most difference. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti uparitam ashnami prayatatmana. If one offers with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Singular terms, patram. In Sanskrit, let's not get technical, but patram is individual, a leaf. Patrani is plural, many leaves. So he says, patram, pushpam, one flower. Phalam, one fruit. Toyam, one water. No. And so, so each of these are individual, singular items. He's saying that because it's very clearly explained, the quantity doesn't matter. We did a whole description. We did a whole class simply on these last couple of verses, only 8 verses, and it took us the whole time to discuss. If the Lord cares so much about what you are offering to him, I'll get into that in a minute. If the Lord cares so much about what we're offering unto him, then, you know, he's not going to say, Patram Pushpam, why did he eat Vidura's wife's banana peels? He didn't eat the banana. She accidentally threw the banana away and gave the peel to the Lord ate it. But Duryodhan puts a nice meal, he doesn't want it. And so in the same way that when Sudama comes, he comes with a little bag of chipped rice. What is the chipped rice? For a king, the king of Dwaraka. No, but he still accepts it. Because it's not about the object. What's the most important thing? So it's repeated twice in the verse. Bhakti. Devotional service. Love and devotion. That food or that whatever we are offering is a means of transporting our love. It's a means of giving our love. That love is important. You know, in the same way that this example is very much used, that when the child is he pesters the parents. Oh, can you please buy me a chocolate digestive biscuit? Please, I want a chocolate digestive. So they buy the chocolate digestive and they go into the car and they're about to go home. And the child opens the chocolate digestive sitting in the back seat, the booster seat, opens and takes the first chocolate digestive biscuit out. And then he says, Papa, you take first. How does the father feel? It's his digestive biscuits. He's bought it with his own money. The child's not done anything. But yet, that feeling of love is what is the most important thing. The Lord takes that emotion of the love, that devotion, that intention, which is there. The food doesn't matter to him. Whether it be someone as simple as Shabari picking berries. It doesn't matter how simple or complex. The Lord accepts the love and devotion. There's actually a very nice story in this regard to do with the simplicity or the complexity of devotional service. The story is given that there was a king, and he used to love doing regal worship of the Lord. He used to get all the jewelry, all the garlands, make it look so opulent. And then when a young Brahman comes and he just throws water with tulsi leaves on the Lord. And the king becomes annoyed. What is this you're doing? You're just throwing the very simple. You've ruined my decoration. All my flowers are wet. The jewelry is wet. It's very expensive gold. Why are you doing like that? This is not the way to do. And so I'm not going to get through the whole story, but they have this little transcendental competition where the king does very grand gestures and the Brahman does very, very small gestures. This is given in the Narasimha Purana. And what happens in the end? When the Brahman passes away, he does very simple gestures. Then he takes the four-armed form, and the Vishnu Dudas come to take him. And so the king sees the Vishnu Dudas taking him. He thinks, oh, I've made such a big mistake. But when he looks down, he's also got four-armed form, and the Vishnu Dudas are coming to take him as well. And so in the end of the day, they both become the sixth gatekeepers. And the seventh gate, the final gate of Vaikuntha, you have Jay and Vijay. But before that, these two are there. One did a complex way, and he put all the jewelry and everything. One did a very simple manner. It's not the simple or complex that doesn't matter. It's not Lord is saying only simple, only complex. It's not that. It's the love. The love and devotion needs to be there. That's the gist of it. That's really the summary. And so, at the end, we have this verse which summarizes the entire Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yukteva matmana matparayana. Engage your mind in thinking of me, becoming my devotee. Offer obeisances unto me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. This is it. The purpose of our material life becomes fulfilled when we carry out the purport of this verse. When we offer and dedicate our lives to the Lord, not only do we feel happy, the Lord provides everything we need, but it becomes so much easier, and we are also going to get transported to the spiritual world. So it's very, very simple. Then we have the opulence chapters. Chapter 10 very simply describes the opulence of the Lord. That we can always see the Lord everywhere. This is the point which is go across. The Lord describes one very important point though. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. That Lord Krishna is the source of everything that be. Whether material or spiritual, he's the source. And so the devotees, they know that they perpetually engage in his worship. Very nicely explained in the 9th verse, which is the verses 8 to 11, or the summary of the Gita in a nutshell. And the 9th verse very nicely describes that it's by doing this, what's the wording again? It's the Tushyanticha Ramanticha. Tushyanti means pleased, and Ramanti means very blissful. So when they constantly engaged, it's very similar to the Manmana Bhava Madbhakta verse. Pure devotees are constantly engaged in this devotion. They become very pleased, very joyful. And so it's the idea of that love over fear, which we will see again, that comes in the 11th chapter. But the Lord goes on to describe so many opulences in these verses. And he says, oh, I'm the amongst the men, I'm the strength. I'm the intelligence of the intelligent. I'm the strength of the strong. Of all mantras, I'm the Gayatri mantra. Of all various hymns, I'm the Samaveda. Of all various, so it gives all these descriptions of all fish, I'm the shark. Of all stars, I'm the moon. Of all, so it's all of this like very simple. I'm trying to think what's the word. Of all types of cheating, I'm gambling, and very much like of all of this, whatever is the greatest or the most materially opulent, that is the Lord is describing that is him. That is because not that the Lord is now impersonal all of a sudden, but rather that he's explaining that wherever you look, the devotee sees in this consciousness of the Lord. Everything is related to the Lord. And all the senses on the mind is the most powerful sense. Whenever the mind is distracted, we can think of the Lord. Whenever we see the ocean of bodies of water, we can think of the Lord. Whenever we think of the letter A among the alphabet, we can think of the Lord. Whenever we see the time aspect, we can think of the Lord. And so even when we see the greatest thief of all thieves, I'm death. When we see death, we can also think of the Lord. And the perfect example in this regard is Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, he was given snakes, and he thought, wow, snakes like Anantashesha, who is nothing but the carrier of the Lord Vishnu. And when he saw the poison came from the milk ocean along with Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is my mother. So therefore the poison is like my uncle. Will my uncle do anything to me? No. And so this way, everything he sees in connection with the Lord, and therefore becomes joyful, because whenever the Lord is remembered, we become joyful. It might be slightly mechanical at first, but once we chant, especially the singing is really important to get that joy out of us. But when we chant and sing, then we'll be able to experience that joy. And so everything is seen with this one perspective of the Lord, the Lord's hand behind everything. the cause of everything. Whether we see this table, whether we see how this laptop's working, the technology behind it, we need to remember that in the end, all of these have causes, but the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam, Lord Brahma describes, is the Lord. So we can always see the Lord's hand behind everything. So whenever I look at the sun, or we can see the rain, we can always think of the Lord in that regard. And then the Lord mentions one very important point to understand his opulence. He says that in the ending of this chapter, verse 41, Yadyad vibhuti matsatvam shrimat urjitam evavat tatevavagachatvam mama tejo amsha sambhavam. That's simply by a spark of my splendor, amsha. I'm everything beautiful, opulent, and every glorious creation is just coming from that spark. Just a little spark, the inconceivable, the opulent nature of the Lord. And he says very nicely at the end, Atavabhaunai tenena kimnyatena tavajuna vishtabhyahamidam kritsnam mekamshena stito jagat. But what I need is there, O Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge. With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So, the important point there is that the Lord is so opulent. He's so opulent. He is described as all his opulences we can see around us. And we can always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. The more we do this, the more we train ourselves to do that as well, the more happy we will naturally become, because our source of happiness is not material, it's spiritual. And so that's the first idea. And the other important point to take is that the Lord is so powerful that it's just a simple spark, an amsha, a minute particle of his splendor that he's maintaining the entire creation. And so now after hearing this, Arjuna becomes interested. Arjuna becomes very much interested. And so he says, you've described all of this. I want to see it. I want to see what you're talking about. And so we have the chapter 11, the universal form. The universal form is like, it's described, the 10th chapter is like an audio, and the 11th chapter is like a video. He can see it in front of him. He can see everything. He can see not just space, he can see time, everything that's ever existed in the material creation he can see, sitting in one place. So you're just sitting in this one place, you can see everything in the material creation. You can see all the planets, the time, the past, present, the future, everything. And it's just experiencing this massive effulgence all around him. He's seeing all these, teeth, this warriors, everything. He sees himself there as well, because the Lord is the cause of everything. And so he sees it. And first, what does he become? He goes through a variety of emotions we've just described. That he becomes firstly like awe, and then shock, and then fear. And so he goes through a range of emotions, and he sees many, many necks. Aneka vaktranayana maneka buddha darshanam maneka divyabharanam divyanekodhyatayudam divyamalyam bharadaram divyagandhanulepram sarvashcharyamayam devam anantam vishvatomukam. So many necks and jewelries and colors and all of these. He's just seeing so much, and it becomes quite a sensory overload, and he's shocked and he's fearful. And so what does he do? He offers obeisances over and over again. I offer obeisances to your front. I offer obeisances to your back. I offer obeisances to your side. I offer obeisances, O Lord, who is the cause of destruction. And he's very much focused on that fearful, powerful, in a sense, it's described as horrible aspect of the Lord. It's so fearful, like he's fear-invoking. And he becomes very scared. But the Lord then assumes, in the end, his two-armed form. And one thing that's mentioned is that a lot of people, you will have no issue, if you go, you will find no issue of at least 10 to 12 Babajis claiming that they are God. Because it's very nice. If I claim I am God, then you'll donate to me and I'll make a lot of money. And so I can then easily make some money. So then anyone can claim they are God. And so Lord Krishna does this for one reason, is that when you see the universal form is there, then that person is God. When Ram showed his universal form as well, and other incarnations of the Lord, they've always shown the universal form. It's like a test. We can't even lick our own elbow. What to speak of? I know people may be trying it now at home in a very awkward position, trying to lick that. We can't even lick our own elbow when we think we are so great. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is such that he shows the universal form. This is one of the qualities of the Supreme. And so Arjuna offers prayers in fear, and finally the Lord comes back to his beautiful Soumya. Soumya means very beautiful, very sweet form. And that's when Arjuna becomes calm. It's described, Arjuna couldn't even say the word, he keeps on referring to the Lord as Vishnu that time. because he couldn't think that my dear friend Lord Krishna is in such an expansion. He couldn't feel it, because whenever the emotion is there with Lord Krishna, it's always the friend and loving. And so that's actually described, that we can have all varieties of levels of understanding, but it all comes back down to this. The devotional aspect, the one with the Somya Vapu, is so much more relaxed and calm and peaceful and blissful and enjoyable. And so even if it's a fearful chapter, it's a very nice ending. Bhaktya shakya, verse 54. Bhaktya shakya hameva vidorjuna nyatam drashtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So Arjuna is given a sort of a horrifying experience almost, but he rounds it off with a very sweet point. Very, very nice point. And so he ends again with this chapter ends with a very nice description again of the activities of the devotees. The devotees are described Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena in Brahma Samhita. Anjana means mascara and Prema means love. So that they are having the mascara of love on their eyes as they look at the Lord. That's a really important point. They're looking at the Lord is not fearful, Lord Krishna. It's very loving. And so that's the really important point. There is two types of worship. God-fearing worship, God-loving worship. And in the God-fearing worship we do, oh, he can do this, he's sending us to hell, he'll do this and that if I do wrong. But in the God-loving worship, which is that which is advocated, which is more important, and far more important than the God-fearing, then you only see the love. And whatever mistakes Lord Krishna brushes aside because he sees that love. And that's the only thing that Lord wants in the end of the day. Nrsimhadev, they tried so many things to stop him. There are very many descriptions described of how the demigods tried to stop him from being so angry. And then Prahlad comes and offers some wonderful prayers, very loving prayers, and he becomes pacified. Because that's it. That's all the Lord needs from our side. He just wants our love. Because that's really what it is about. And then finally, we conclude with this very short but very sweet chapter. Only 20 verses in the 12th chapter, the Devotional Service, Bhakti Yoga, summary. And the Lord describes various processes of understanding, and he explains that worshipping the Lord himself in his personal form as Lord Sri Hari, Lord Krishna, is so important. Why? And why is it so much better and more practical? Because the other one seems to be a little more impractical. There's so many dangers on that path. And so the Lord says very nicely in the verses 6 and 7, Etu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matpara ananyeneva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate tesham aham samurdarta mritya samsara sagarat bhavami na chirat partha maya veshita chetasam bhavami na chirat partha. I become the swift deliverer, for we are swimming in an ocean of material existence. But the Lord becomes the swift deliverer for those who serve him. Because the one thing that is there in this process of devotional service is not there in the other ones. In the other processes, you're relying on your own strength. In this process, the Lord will save us. If you're swimming stuck out in the sea, the tide is pushing against you from this angle, and some shark is coming to eat you from another angle, it's a nightmare to try and get out of there. But if someone, by your own strength, try and swim, but if someone just comes and they come on their boat and they just pick you up and put you in the boat, how simple that is. So that's the difference. The difference is that one process requires our own strength to be there, but the Lord says very simply, Bhavami nachirat partha. I will take care. Gajendra, he was in a massive war. Yeah, he's been fighting with this crocodile. And what he does is simply offers, again, a flower, pushpam, just one flower, and he offers wonderful prayers. Om namo bhagavate tasmai yataye tachitatmikam purushaya dibijaya pareshaya didimahi. Wonderful prayers. And then the Lord comes. It's poetically described, actually. Lord comes so quick that Garuda is running behind him. The various Shankha Chakra Gada Padma, they're running behind him because the Lord is going that quick, that much of swift delivery. Forget your Amazon Prime coming tomorrow. Lord will come instantly to save us. And so he becomes Bhavami Nachirat Partha. He himself will take care. So that's the beauty of devotional service. The Lord takes care of us. And then finally, in this devotional service, the various levels of understanding are described. That at least if you have some sort of knowledge, try and do meditation. If you better than meditation is giving up the fruit of action, and this very technical aspect. But in the end of the day, it just comes that devotional service brings you true peace of mind. And then finally, various qualities, sweet qualities of the Lord are described. If anyone's interested in the various processes, please look at verse number 12. But the various sweet qualities of the devotee, we can see Adveshta, the one who's non-envious to all living entities, animals, plants, and humans, eco-friendly, as well as supporting the plants and the animals as well. So all of these things are there, and we can measure ourselves. It's an indicator. Just like when you want to check your temperature, you have a thermometer. In the same way that when you want to check how well am I progressing in my devotion, we have to check that these qualities are changing. Are we becoming more non-envious? Are we becoming more supportive to all living entities? Are we becoming more equiposed in happiness and distress materially? All these qualities. Are we becoming more truthful? Satyam bhuyam priyam bhuyam. Speak the truth and speak it sweetly. Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyam hitam cha. It's like that. The austerities of the speech is that you should speak the truth, but you should speak sweetly as well. Those qualities, are we developing? Are we becoming friend of all living entities? These practical points. The level is that if we simply read and understand, but we don't apply in our day-to-day life, then there is no change. So we need to try and apply and make this Krishna consciousness as easy as possible. And because the Lord is so sweet, what does he end each verse with? Bhaktiman me priyo naraha. Bhaktiman yassa me priya. He's always saying Bhakta steti va me priya, only ending with priya. Priya means love, the loving one or the dear one, someone who's dear. And so all the processes are described, but this is unique to the Bhakti Yoga, the process of love and devotion. Because the Lord is so sweet. Madhuradhipatir madhuram. Everything about the Lord is so sweet because he's the emperor of sweetness. And so that love and devotion is the summary, the essence, and all we need to do in our life. It's very difficult, very rare to come to the understanding of the God, and we're about to conclude now. So it's very rare to come to the understanding of Lord Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. It's very, very rare that people understand that Lord Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, is the Supreme Personality of God, and they try to engage in the devotional service. So if we have a chance, we have this human form of life, let's utilize it in the service of the Lord. Whatever we are interested in, let's use our talents and employ our skills in the service of the Lord. Whatever understanding we have, let's use it in the service of the Lord. It's very simple. To serve brings us happiness. There's various levels of service. Serve other people, serve the family, serve the nation. But in the end of the day, the best happiness you can only get from serving the Lord, because all the other types of service will give you misery somewhere. That's why it's described that if you want to be patriotic, nationalistic, supportive of your family, friends, and just so loving to everyone else, you want to have all these love for all these things, don't go to Govinda. Why? Because if you go to Govinda, then you will become so loving towards him, you will become so attracted towards him, that you will forget everything else and you just want him. Hari is the one who steals. And the Lord will steal away all these bad qualities. We should endeavor to develop these good qualities. The Lord steals away these bad qualities, and he helps us facilitate those good qualities. But not only does he steal away those bad qualities, he steals our heart as well. That's the description of Hari. So this is the conclusion of the middle 6 chapters. Oh, yes. Okay, so there's a description that even the minimal devotional service, the Lord will magnify like anything. And so in the Padma Purana, the story is given that there's a terrible man, terrible person. He's doing all sorts of nonsense in the forest. He's making sure that whenever travelers come through that forest, he'll rob them and he will take all their jewelry and wealth and whatnot. And he was doing all sorts of terrible activities. We don't want to get into that now. But he was doing all of that. But then one day, luckily, he got the association of a saint, of a devotee. And this same person who is so cruel, the wretched worst of men, he, just because of seeing the saint and the association of the saint, he didn't hang out with him, didn't talk to him, just seeing him, there was a change in the heart, minute change in the heart. And so they were eating this flower. There is a flower, and apparently somehow or other when it's eaten, it's described that it causes some sort of intoxication effect. So he's got all these flowers there. And the sage asks, can I take one flower and use it in the Lord's service? He says, yes. And just naturally, as the sage is offering, he's becoming attracted to this form of the Lord and this worship. Like he's becoming mesmerized. And so then he offers obeisances in the end as well. This terrible person, he sees the transformation of heart within him. And so he offers obeisances. And that's it. And at the end of his life, the Yamadutas come. They think, no, you've done all sorts of terrible activities, but the Vishnu Dutas come and say, Lord Vishnu has seen this one quality. What's that quality? That he served with love and devotion, and he supported the saint. And so Just that one quality alone has negated everything else he has done. It's not also the important point to mention is once he offered the flower, he didn't go back and start stealing from other people. That's very important. After that, he became a changed man, and that's it. That's all we need. The association of the devotee is what can transform our heart. And so it's just simply look how merciful Lord Vishnu is, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just any small thing we do, he will magnify. He will take care of us. Vahamyaham, he said. He says, Bhavami nacharat partha. I will become the swift deliverer, and he will take us out of here quickly. So this is really the summary. Chapter 7 to 12 that deals with the importance of love and devotion. That love is the most important thing. Loving devotion, even among bhakti as well, prema bhakti, loving devotional service is the topmost. And when that love is there, then how can there be any hate or anything else in the heart? So the heart slowly becomes rid of these things as well. And we will notice that change in our life. People may say it's a nonsense, but if you take up, you can see to this day that this process will change people. So I'm sorry we ended 9 minutes over time. There's a little question that Shikha Mataji asked that I didn't answer earlier because I didn't want to disrupt the flow, but it's a very important question. Gita says if we worship ancestors, then we go to ancestors. So how should we perceive Pitri Shraddha? Is it also worshipping of ancestors? So this Shraddha ceremony is it should be performed in accordance with devotional service. When one says worship of demigods is not the topmost idea, it's not that the worship of the demigods itself is causing a problem, but it's the worship with the material desires. But then when one comes to the devotional understanding, then one respects the demigods anyway. So it's not that one now stops, no, you don't respect your ancestors. No, respect. Do this, whatever. But remember that you should, there's a description actually I'll give. 21 generations above and below of a devotee, a pure devotee will be delivered. That's one of the things mentioned in the Prahlad Maharaj, in the Narasimhadev pastime. He says that, my dear Lord, please deliver my father, who is a terrible person. And Narasimhadev says, simply by your devotional service, he was already delivered. That's another point there. But the important point is that it's not about you stop other things. You neglect, you disrespect. The disrespect is not there. The respect is there, but the consciousness is now not normal consciousness, not a ritualistic one, but a Krishna conscious idea. That love and devotion to the Lord. So we pray to the Lord, my dear Lord, please help me and help my ancestors as well. And so then the Shraddha ceremony is more than successful. That's very, very important to get across. So yes, it's not worshipping of ancestors as in I'm worshipping ancestors to go to ancestors and neglecting the Lord. But rather when worship of the Lord is there, then this also is naturally there as well. So you can do, but do in accordance with devotional service. Not exclusively, mutually exclusive to devotion. It should be done along with that.
Some people exclusively worship.
Yeah, if you exclusive, so this point is not even those who worship ancestors and then go worship demigods for material. This is only worship of ancestors. Exclusive. They reject the other worship, the worship of Lord Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, all the demigods and all these things they reject. And they just do that. So those people who are extremely attached to ancestors will go there. So yes, it's very important that it's done along with devotional service. Devotional service turns all the zeros in our life, it puts a 1 in front of them and it fixes all the problems. Yes, Prahlad Maharaj, speaking of Hiranyakashipu, a terrible person, but yet Prahlad Maharaj still performed the final rites of Hiranyakashipu. Very, very important point to get across. So no, I didn't want that misunderstanding to be there because that disrespect is not there, that neglect is not there, but it's just the mindset of devotional service is there. Okay, sorry, dear devotees, I've taken a little more time than necessary. Also, I was going to say that, material world is a place full of miseries. I went to the barber yesterday expecting one thing to happen, and I got something else happened. So I can definitely tell you, yes, material world is definitely a place full of miseries. I'm able to understand that now. So next time we will see each other at the start of next month, the first Sunday, which will be the 2nd. And then I may not see you for the 16th Sunday due to my exams, my mock exams, but I will definitely make sure that I'm there the month after in June. So I'd just like to put that out there that I may not be here for one class, but Gita carries on. So, Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. See each other next time, 2nd of May and we'll discuss the 13th chapter, which is very technical, and prasadam will be served in your own homes. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.